Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another of our series of interviews with our sponsors and partners from the recent Insurtech 100 series. I'm delighted to be joined today by our friends and launch partners, in fact, from Generali. And during the course of today's discussion, we're going to be taking a look at their thoughts, views, perspectives on the report itself, the data that underpins it, and of course the trends that we're seeing in the market, which are affecting pretty much all of us in some way, shape, or form. So with that, without further ado, then I think let's get into it. And maybe if I hand the mic over to Stefano, perhaps you could introduce yourself to us all.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Matt, for having us here and for having us sponsoring the report, first of all. I'm Stefano Bison. I take care of business development, strategic partnerships, and innovation for the Generali Group. I'm based in Milan, working with a super talented team, which I'm proud of. And before Generali, which I've been with, I think, for 9 years now, it's quite a lot. I've been back and forth in consulting and investment banking between Milan and London. Over to you, Danilo.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Matt, also from me for having us here and for having us sponsoring the report. My name is Danilo Raponi. I am responsible of the innovation part within the remits that Stefano just mentioned, and as such, I take care, for example, of our innovation fund, which is one of the biggest initiatives of the group. I have joined Generali just about 2 years ago, and before I was for a long time in reinsurance in Munich Re, Swiss Re, and a bit stint in consulting as well.
Fantastic. So probably fair to say that we're in good company when it comes to commentating on on what we're seeing in the market and what that means for the insurance industry.
Hopefully.
Yeah, time will tell, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, thank you guys, and thank you again. Really, it's been a pleasure working with you on this, and of course, more broadly, very proud to call Generali customers as well. So, with that in mind, let's go a little bit deeper into Generali, and let's explore a little bit how you're set up, right? So. Let's start maybe with, how is innovation set up for Generali, and what role does it play strategically? You've alluded to a number of topics already, so I'm assuming that the role is significant. But let's over to you.
Yes, thanks, Matt. Maybe I'll take this one. Generali is, I think a bit of context is important here because Generali is quite a federated company, right? By that we mean, that it has a privileged, a decentralized structure where all, let's say, the P&L power is within business units which are scattered around the world. We have a handful that are very, very large, and then a series of others that have specific remits, either geographically or vertically on certain topics. So basically, what we do, Stefano and myself, we are at the office in Milan, and what we do as group innovation, and similar to what all other group functions do, we steer and promote innovation with various instruments, right? So we have various tools and things that we do. For example, the innovation fund that I quickly mentioned before. The innovation fund is there to do exactly that, right? To really promote innovation that takes down place mainly locally, right? Locally could also mean, again, very close to the head office. We have other structures that don't do only insurance, for example, like Generali Real Estate, one example, but still, there are separate units within the group. With the Innovation Fund, we obviously finance the initiatives that we deem most worthwhile to be promoted, and we also help them methodologically, however, to make sure that they go through the innovation stage gate process as well, as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I think it's fair also to mention that, for anybody who has seen the evolution of Generali strategy over the year, innovation has been for a long time, and this is still now a fundamental pillar of our strategy. And this really reflects in a lot of the things that the group does in terms of, things that we have been doing for a few years now, but also new things that we are trying out this year, which we'll talk in a second, like the VC initiatives, for example.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's you know, the investment part. It sounds like a setup which enables you to, you know, from a process and cultural perspective, engage with these businesses pretty effectively. But we also noticed that, you know, there are a number of Insurtech 100 companies that you're actually working with already, right? And you know, could you expand a little bit on how you work with startups in general? You know, those perhaps are a good example to reference, but equally appreciate that there are some of the more mature businesses, and you're working with both the more mature and earlier stage ventures too, right?
Yeah, if you let me, Danilo, I'll take this one. No, absolutely. So Insurtech 100 is actually pretty full of companies that we have either already partnering with, we are either already partnering with, or we have in our radar, we have been discussing, but not really found the right, let's say, setup and business model. Clearly, not all of them are really startups anymore. There's some that are,
Sure,
you know, very solid scale-ups. I can even name a few in a sec, but let me say before that, just to add on what Danilo just said, we have a very pragmatic approach to innovation. And this is also relevant for the investment part that we just mentioned, which means that we typically love experimenting, as always, which is needed in innovation, but we are pragmatic in the sense that we try to find almost immediately in the process companies with which it's possible to collaborate from day zero. So we typically discard too early stage ideas or companies completely without traction. I mean, we do something here and there. Once again, in the federated approach, it's relatively easy to have a portfolio approach. But in general, we prioritize those companies, and when I make the examples, it's going to look much clearer. Those companies that already have a clear product proposition, a clear value proposition, and even maybe a go-to-market strategy where we fit, and we either could give them access to our huge distribution network, or vice versa, we could use their services and products for enhancing our value proposition. So these partnerships can, of course, work in the same way with large big tech players, and not really only for startups. But just to name a couple of examples, we're working with the Cart Underwriting, with which we have an exclusive partnership for developing parametric products for agriculture and energy and utilities, for example. It's a partnership. It's up and running since a few years, and now the premium volume is getting. I can't give you the exact number because it's confidential, but it's getting really relevant. And this is, you know, one of those partnerships where the complementarity between the players is really evident. You know? So typical, you know, MGA focusing on a niche and having super deep knowledge on that thing. Yeah. On the other side, just to name another example, but there's many others. Now there is Cover. Now there's this huge trend of embedded insurance or B2B2C. They are a very nice platform. There's many, in all honesty, but they are a very nice platform for playing in this game, bypassing and sort of leapfrogging our legacy issues and legacy system boundaries. We are working already with them in France. We're having a number of discussions, but then, I mean, there's Boltec and Shift, Plus Sample, Care Voice. I mean, there's a number of others which I could develop, but I hope you got more or less, let's say, the sense of what we are trying to achieve with their help, of course.
Yeah, very much so. To be honest, I think we could spend an entire session just talking about that, right?
Agreed. And sorry for not being synthetic. You're right. But
no, not at all. Just do yourself a disservice there. But yeah, some fantastic brands in and of themselves, and some very interesting products being taken to market. With that sort of context set in mind, then why don't we sort of segue now into your perspective on the market at the moment, or how, and particularly how it's evolving? You know, lots of hype out there, lots of clickbait headlines, but really, maybe if we explore the impact of this kind of post super cycle period, I think you've described in the past, both for startups but also for Generali, because you're clearly engaging heavily with these businesses.
No, indeed. I can go on and then I let Danilo to complement. Typically, I'm the one a bit more gloomy or realistic, and he's the one more optimist, let's say. But so what I see, and I'll try to be really synthetic this time, and I'll sort of echo what I said to part of our executive team a few days ago during one of the steering committee of innovation. So finally, there has been a correction, because frankly speaking, the valuations that we were seeing made no sense from any point of view. And this is not only relevant to Insurtech, it's on all the tech, sector. Of course, as always, when correction happens, they typically overcorrect. So I'm expecting a rebound at some point. Of course, the macro headwinds are not helping that to happen immediately, but we are in a situation where we're moving back to, let's say, value rather than grow. Investors are more attentive to fundamentals. And now, frankly speaking, for Generali, it's more interesting to look at these companies also as potential targets or as potential investments. Because investments, for example, is something we do quite seldom, only when the startup is already doing good work with us. So when the partnership is established, then it makes sense, to create even an equity relationship. But this was also because the valuations were, frankly speaking, almost ridiculous. Just justified by many things, but not really sound. So let's say the good news for me is that, as always, the crisis will select very much the winner and the losers. We help creating this divergence between what's really working and what was only top line.
Sure.
Combined ratio is the elephant in the room. That's gonna be, the new, I think, hard KPI that all startups will, especially the D2C ones, will start having to manage. And let's say we're sort of ready to embrace this new normalized normal, hopefully. Danilo, if you want to add something, so
yeah, no, thanks.
more optimist.
Yeah, this time I can concur with you, and I have to actually. I mean, but maybe I would use the word crisis, right? Maybe perhaps instead of a crisis is, and you also said it, a realignment, right? So I coming back to more economic normalcy in a way, right? Alignment with fundamentals and things, which just means that what happens typically in these moments of crisis or realignment, whatever you want to call them, is that then the ones who actually have some solid fuel in their engines, they keep going, all right, and those instead were already struggling but maybe were masquerading that under a shining narrative, they are not maybe doing so well anymore, right? Which doesn't mean that they will disappear. They will have to maybe pivot slightly or change their business models and stuff, which again offers more opportunities for us to either work with them, help them benefit from their services, invest in them, and try to do all sorts of things in the space.
And Matt, I'm not sure we have time for this, but I will try. And sorry for jumping in, but I read an article recently saying that there was a whole group of people that never saw a proper crisis in their life, and most of these were startup entrepreneurs. So truth be told, crises happen from time to time. I was in Lehman in 2008, so I know it on my skin. And having a business model that is resilient, I think, is the basis for creating a sustainable company. This doesn't mean that it's not possible to get rich within the crisis window, no? And many did, and many successfully created, let's say, financial value for themselves and for their investors. But then at some point, reality is going to hit hard.
Sure.
And we have been around for 190 years. We want to be around for another 190 years at least. And this is why we are very pragmatic and realistic in looking at things.
Yeah, very interesting. So forgive me because I also have a question I'm not sure we have time for as well. But do you see any what are the sort of characteristics of businesses that you think will thrive over the coming? Who knows how long this some of these headwinds will last, right? But let's assume sort of a 12-month, 18-month window. What do you think are some of the characteristics that the businesses that will succeed and thrive through this period will exhibit? Is it to do with sector? Is it distribution? Is it fundamentally the business model? A combination of all of those things? What are your thoughts?
In general, my take would be it's definitely a combination of all these things. It's how you create value. You need to have not necessarily a value creation mechanism in place from day zero, but you need to have a path to sustainable profit generation. And it has to be clear. Of course, it's much clearer for B2B companies where lead cycles are way longer than D2C, but at least it's relatively easier to steer. For D2C, I think the secret is more difficult to find. And I don't have in mind many good examples, and I'm not going to mention them, of course, but of really capable companies in terms of generating profitable results. And this is also because it's a super regulated industry. Yep. And going D2C with a new product, etc., oftentimes you have the regulators sort of fighting back. So it's really, really tough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So how about so we've got a broader macro context, but then so how do we tie that then to the Insurtech 100? And we spend a lot of time analyzing the businesses, and then obviously handing over to our esteemed judging panel to help us sift through and finalize the list. Out of that, a bunch of themes emerge, but perhaps your thoughts on this changing narrative of Insurtech versus insurance. Is it still a thing? Has it changed significantly? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe I'll give it a go, as I was thinking about that actually earlier, and in a way it links a bit to what we were just saying, right? About reaction to the crisis or similar, right? I think it's a big part. I think what emerges also from the report, right, which was one of the points that made it quite striking, is that I think it carries on this forced realignment in a way. It also helps Insurtech to change the narrative and make it overall, I would say, more constructive, right? At least from an incumbent's point of view, it looks like it, and it continue with this moving away from necessarily having to compete to cooperate, right? To finding ways of how can we work together. And there is loads of different ways, right? So beyond what you normally do. Again, also because of what Stefano said before, right? Really, it's tough, right, to do D2C, right? So again, more and more we'll try to look at instead, how can we make our business model work perhaps as a B2B, or either start directly with our pivot to B2B, right? Also, again, another challenging thing, also very costly, is obviously to go direct, right? So there's at the beginning a lot of hype, we need to disrupt completely the insurance value chain. Agents are rubbish, don't need them anymore. And to now say, oh, maybe it's not really that immediate, this evolution, right? So let's maybe go back to a hybrid model, or even to having our own brokers or agents or whatever. That's another thing. And this obviously changes the model of business, but it also really changes the narrative to which you go to the market, right? These are big changes, no? So there are really a bit of realignments along the fundamentals of the industry, and I want to play now the role of the old white man who says, "Oh, I told you so," right? Yeah, exactly. The dinosaur who says, "I'm coming back after 65 million years." But it's a bit, right? The industry. There is a reason why the industry has been like this for 200 years. We are in innovation, so we don't want it to be like this for another 200 years. Yeah. But evolution rather than revolution, and I think this is also what Insurtech are realizing. To be honest, we love Insurtech, and we want to make sure that the innovation power that they have, and of which we also benefit, stays, right? But with this realignment, I think it becomes even more impactful because it's more realistic. So let's carry on.
It's a matter of credibility, I think, ultimately, and talking about also ourselves as innovation practitioner, no? So we want things to change, but they have to be sound. If we keep shouting and, aligning our voice with the one of the hype, at some point you won't be credible anymore, because, as I said, sooner or later something happens, and either you are creating value or you're not gonna be around for long.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
No, that's really interesting. I wonder. I think it's human nature, right, to get excited about new shiny things that are potentially making a difference or have can shape the future. I wonder. Do you think that people really, particularly on the D2C side, whether they really felt it would be as disruptive as they were stating, or do you think it was more around making a statement in the market and from a marketing and PR perspective, grabs headlines, grabs attention, but actually underneath is probably perhaps a more mature view of how they were going to develop.
For me, there was also, I think, some conviction, right? Some people that were really convinced, also based, to be honest, on market research and loads of interviews that were performed, saying, "Oh, the new generations they will never want to speak to anyone. They just want to do everything themselves online, as they shop on Amazon, and the same they will want to do on insurance. So let's go. This is the future, right?" But I think paradoxically that was based more on a bias of themselves, right? Maybe people like me, or 40 years old like us, or younger, a bit younger, but not so young, right? Paradoxically, then there is actually, it's more a matter of the whole insurance proposition. It's not only a matter on how you propose it to the younger generation. So the distribution channel is one thing, but if you need to overhaul something, you need to do it more comprehensively without necessarily disrupting completely the distribution channel. So I think there is, just sorry to not to elaborate for too long, there was certainly some hype, and it was cool, right, to go out with some big bursts and to make reference to Renaissance merchants in Florence and stuff like that. But some people actually believed it was the future.
Sure.
And maybe it will be at some point.
If I can compliment, I agree with Danilo. I think they were like super honest in setting up this, and everybody at the beginning really thought it was possible. And I'm thinking about the most famous D2C players and examples that we all have in mind.
Yes.
Nonetheless, there's a problem of, and once again, I'll try to be very pragmatic, of aligning value creation with customer acquisition cost.
Sure.
And this is clearly not working, but it's not only a matter, an issue of Insurtech. Think about the neobanks.
Yes.
We all see the same problems more or less across sectors. These are fantastic customer acquisition machines, but then finding ways to make it sustainable over time, it's really, really hard. This doesn't mean that it's not possible, because there are some sectors and segments that can be served digitally. And actually, digital probably is the only way to go to them, because you're aligning the cost to serve to the customer lifetime value. But it has to be on specific products and specific propositions. If you think that you're gonna disrupt insurance, digitalize, and cut off the agents from tomorrow, I already know where this is gonna end.
Yeah. Well, I guess hey, look, the future's not yet written, right? So it's not to say that it's just because it hasn't happened yet. The predictions could realize themselves in years to come.
Indeed.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Apologies for the slight diversion, but again, really interesting interesting topic. Well, let's take a step back then to the spread of the businesses that we featured in the Insurtech 100, and really encouraging for me personally, looking at such a broad spread and representation from all around the world. How is Generali designed to capitalize on innovation globally? And are there any particular markets that of interest to you guys?
But to be in this, I will promise I will be very synthetic, and to be clear, there's no, I mean, we have our prioritization matrix, but ultimately we are a global player present in 50+ market. We are present in all lines of business with really few exceptions on some specialty lines. So frankly speaking, we look at everything. We are mainly European, so clearly we're going to prioritize what's going to happen here, and I think it's very consistent with the Insurtech 100 report. Nonetheless, I mean, LATAM, even though now in a very difficult situation macroeconomically, Asia is also very interesting. There's a lot going on in India, and in India we have quite big operations. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that we look at everything, but ultimately we do look at everything, and then we prioritize massively depending on, you know, the kind of impact that you can expect from the specific initiative.
No, also because, you know, it sounds maybe pleonastic to say we look at everything, but in a way that the decentralized structure that we mentioned at the beginning, even though it may have shortcomings in some senses and for some reasons, it has also advantages, and this is one, right? Because of having so many business units everywhere, we do really, and also people working in innovation also scattered around a bit. We really have the ability to look at everything, right? That is of interest. That doesn't mean that we do everything, but definitely we analyze everything, and then we are quite selective, again, going back to the pragmatism, right, of what we do, but it doesn't mean that we have boundaries in which we say, no, we're definitely not going to look at that, right?
Yeah, okay. Fantastic. And I did think you might answer it in that sort of a way, right? Given the nature of the roles.
We are predictable now.
You're very a curious bunch, let's maybe say that. So let's so this is the point at which I get to I probably ask, you know, these tricky questions in the sense that, look, what's crystal ball time? So, you know, future trends, all of this investment activity, all of these businesses gaining traction, you know, they give us clues and indicators as to what the future is going to look like. What's Generali's take? What are some of the future trends which you think are going to be super significant for you guys and indeed the market in general?
Well, maybe I'll leave the crystal ball to Stefano later. He's better than me. But I'll start with something that we are already doing and which is still, though, to be developed definitely more and more in the future. So we, just to be very, you know, let's say, again, here we clear with one thing, we have launched recently kind of a social innovation stream within what we do, right? So obviously, why were we doing that? Because first of all, you know, starting from the very top in our last lifetime part 24 strategy, we have really joined innovation with sustainability, right? So they go hand in hand for us, right? Which means that everything we do in the future in innovation, it has to be sustainable one way or the other, right? But we want to go beyond that, right? We just want to tick the box, you know, sustainability. We want to make sure that we try to build new businesses, new ventures that are businesses, right? So they are financially sound, but at the same time, they have a clear social impact. Because you know, we think insurance has such a big role to play in it. No, we start really the origins of insurance are, you know, in mutuality, right? In helping people in difficult situations. So we really want to make sure that that aspect of insurance is emphasized once again, right? Which is also, these are also themes which are very dear to our group CEO. So what have we done for now? We have started with one venture I can mention already, although it's still in the making, right? Called MigrAssured, which attempts to address some of the most pressing problems of financial inclusions that migrants and refugees encounter when they come into Europe. And unfortunately, there are a lot of those at the moment in Europe, so we want to make sure that we help them. We are looking specifically at the issue that they face with within the whole accommodation sector, right? So with finding suitable places where to reside temporarily or for shorter or longer terms, right? And this is just as a first attempt of what we do, a little bit also beyond insurance, although of course, you know, it's very much attached to what we do, and again with a clear social impact while remaining on a business building environment. Let's say we will share more about this, of course, as it progresses.
Yeah,
but there is more to the future than sustainability. So Stefano, please.
Yeah, even though this one, I love that you started the crystal ball analysis with this example, because there's so much greenwashing going on.
Absolutely.
And we have this strong belief, which is embedded in our lifetime partner mission, that insurance is a force for good. There are clear market failures and huge protection gaps. So what would be a more noble and useful and, once again, pragmatic way to use innovation, if not for trying to address some of these issues? There's many other things which we are doing, which is hopefully, but we're not certainly, of course, part of the future, which is, for example, analyzing the metaverse. The way we want to understand it, and I'm using this one because it's a good example of this, say, again, pragmatic philosophy. The way we want to look at this is getting our hands dirty in order to, in first person, understand if there is value there. Nonetheless, if you ask me personally, not Generali, not necessarily Danilo, today, what's my view? I'm very bearish. I think we are in full hype. And, you know, rather than seeing you with your avatar in a cartoony way, I'd still pretty much prefer seeing you with Teams, Zoom, or whatever you want to use. No, so if
that's
there
very
is
kind,
use,
Stefano. There are many people who would prefer that they just saw an avatar of me. So
no, but also of me. No, but in general, I'm saying that if this is the use case that we are you know, trying to capitalize all those billions spent in the metaverse, good luck. There is definitely going to be some use cases that probably justify those, but we don't have a clear clue yet. Then, back to your question, the future, I think, is of those companies that will be able to leverage AI, real AI, not the mentioned AI, but the real AI, to somehow digitize, enhance all the insurance value chain, including the more core part. So underwriting has been relatively untouched by Insurtech so far. And that's where AI and new data sources and big data models are going to make huge differences. So, you know, in this, if I have to place a bet in this new normal, you know, where we are all focusing back to fundamentals, etc., B2B companies leveraging AI to innovate on the more core part of the insurance value chain rather than just the distribution. Maybe that's going to be another area where to have a good bet on.
Fantastic.
I agree.
Thank you. Well, listen, we're reaching that point where we're nearly kind of wrapping up now. But before we do, look, a few points that you've touched on that would be great to cover off. And the first, you talked about the new 250 million euro fund. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, telegraphically, it's our new initiative on venture funds. So it's an indirect investment vehicle. We're investing in the biggest and the best, hopefully, venture funds focused on Insurtech and related adjacent sectors, let's say. We have a few. We have scouted all the market. We have discussions with, I think, 20 plus open right now. First investment is about to come, should be in these days. So hopefully PR is on the way. Another one before year end, and then hopefully another one early next year. So 250 will be deployed over the plan horizon. So most likely we'll keep investing also towards 2024 for two reasons. One is we want to make sure we do the right investments, and it's not particularly easy right now, especially because of what we said regarding the market dislocation. That is, you know, it's valid for public and listed companies, but it's being translated also to the private and unlisted ones. And secondly, because we want to take advantage of the cycle. Valuations are adjusting, so there's no need to rush too much. So this is more or less where we are. Of course, with these funds, we don't want just have, the best, the top quartile IRR funds in our portfolio, but we want to have funds that are open in sharing their knowledge with us. Hopefully, it will be two ways. We sharing our fundamentals-driven views on the sector, and them sharing with us what they see, their investment thesis, and their best portfolio companies. So it will also be a sourcing channel, for example, no? But it's on the making. First investment about to be announced. So far so good.
Right. Well, hopefully we'll look forward to breaking the scoop, right?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but you're obviously open for business. So if you're a startup founder, CEO, canny biz dev individual, partnerships director, and they're listening and keen, how would they go about introducing themselves to you and ingratiating themselves?
My recommendation, but then I leave it also to Danilo, because we have, I think, quite complementary point of views on this. My recommendation would be twofold. The first one is show me value, show me traction, show me not only, the dream book, but something that is somehow being proven or on the way of being proven, and that you have a plan to do that. Secondly, this makes our job much easier. I don't want to, push our complexity and our job on their table, but coming with an hypothesis of a use case helps, because if you come and you tell me something that is completely relevant to my business because you didn't do your homework, you don't know that we are, I don't know, mainly retail and mainly European, and you tell me I have a fantastic, the opposite thing. Frankly speaking, it's a bit of a waste of time and we cannot afford. So this would be, let's say, the recommendation. So study our business, come with at least an idea of use case, and it's going to make things much, much easier. Then, of course, that's not going to be the use case that we do. It's going to take a while to iterate and pivot it, but at least that gives you a lot of credibility in our eyes when bringing you, to the different business units of the group and massaging the proposition, and makes things much quicker also afterwards.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Maybe just to complement quickly, don't be shy to come to us. Also, if you may be a little bit too early stage for us, right? Which means maybe we may not be able to work with you immediately, but at least if we see some merits in what you're doing, we can share a path, right? And then we can keep track of what's happening and how you are evolving until we can actually do something together. We have people in the group also, who are able to kind of structure that a bit more informally, like myself, Stefan, our teams, but also other people who have in Switzerland, the staff, again, if you are a strong team, to adopt a bit of a VC view, if you are a strong team with a clear path to the future growth of your business, come to us, we'll have a look, and we can surely at least have a chat.
Fantastic. Gents,
You see, I told you we were complementary, because Danilo is more embracing and is hungry for news, etc. And then I'm the one that says, okay, but this 80% probably next year, this 20% now. No? So, but he's right. I mean, in various countries, we have more appetite for much earlier stage companies. So for the big things, I think my approach is the fair one, no? But that doesn't mean that it's the only approach for the group. So grazie, Danilo, for complimenting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you also alluded to it as well, Stefano. Maybe the delivery was slightly different, but you phrased it in a way that okay, you're approached with, you discuss an initial use case, but actually that may not be the use case that ultimately you look to bring to the business. But you described, or what I inferred from that was, you work with those companies in order to work through that process, right? And you can't do that from a distance or in anything other than partnership. So
that's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't too big and scary. You're right.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, insights, perspectives, crystal ball gazing as well. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I feel like we were just getting started with a number of topics, maybe more to come in the future. But for now, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot.
Matt.
Pleasure being here.